John Lusk here of Lusk Archery Adventures. Series testing, successful hunting. Today I'm going to be testing the Ozcut Elite Series 3-blade. Okay, it's a head out of Australia. You may have seen me test the Ozcut Hurricane, which is a 3-blade single bevel head. I did that about a year ago or so. You can check out that video if you haven't seen that already. That's a really cool head. But this is another 3-blade that they have, their Elite Series. It's a really cool head, and I'm eager to see how it performs. Okay, I'd be remiss if I didn't show what a cool box this is. It's got that 3D thing on the front between the elk and the target. You open it up and it's got these lights behind the broadheads just illuminating them in gold and red. Pretty cool right there. Here you get a good look at the head close up. Of course, it spins very well. This is the 125 grain model. It's got a 1 1/8 inch cut. The blades, by my measurement, are 0.052 inches thick. The overall length is much shorter than most of its competitors. If you look at a VPA, you can see the length of that. If you look at the Cutthroat 3-blade that just came out, you can see the length there. It's one of the shorter single piece 3-blade heads that I've seen. That's going to make it extra durable, as well as it's going to aid in flight. There's less surface area to it. Now, this being a 3-blade like this, it can easily be sharpened on any flat edge. Although because they have this extra tanto tip, there's a bit of a different angle. Not the bevel angle. The bevel angle is still 60 degrees, but it's at a different angle, so it doesn't lay flat. If you lay it flat to sharpen it, the last little bit, the tanto tip, won't get sharpened. So you have to angle the broadhead just a little bit extra in order to sharpen that. And you can do it on any flat stone. Or, as I've noted in a recent test that I did, of the Annihilator, you can also use the Stay Sharp Guide 344 sharpener, which changes the bevel from 60 degrees to 44 degrees. Still very stout, very strong, but much sharper. And so I'm going to sharpen this head up at the end using that and just see how sharp I can get it. But overall, I love the design of this, the simplicity. Looks like it's going to be durable and fly well, and I'm eager to put it to the test. I want to explain a bit about my testing protocol for 2021 at this point. Okay, I do these tests to try to make them as relevant to hunting situations as possible, but I want to provide you with data points. You can determine whether those data points are important to you or not, but I'm going to give you some data points to gauge or judge a broadhead's effectiveness based on, okay? And that way you can make the best broadhead selection for you and your hunting setup and your hunting situation. So I do a flight test where I shoot 2 broadheads and a field point at 40 yards and just see relatively how well do they group together, and I score them accordingly. I do a penetration test, actually 2 penetration tests. One penetration test, I shoot them through a 1/2 inch layer of MDF surrounded by 2 1/3 inch layers of rubber foam mat and backed up by Clear Ballistics FBI grade gel. I do penetration test 2, a second test, where I shoot it into layered cardboard and just see straight up how many layers of cardboard the broadhead penetrates through. I do a sharpness test where I'm using this really cool new scale that I have, the Edge on Up Sharpness Tester. And what it does is it uses this small little clip that's made out of aluminum with a wire, a copolymer wire that's engineered to be super consistent and also engineered to break in a certain way rather than to stretch, just to test edge sharpness. And so I put it on the scale that they make, and I measure the amount of grams of force it takes to cut through that copolymer wire. And there's a scale that comes with the tester that kind of shows you some different things like a butter knife and how many grams of pressure it takes to cut through this wire, a cutlery knife, a razor blade, things like that, so we can gauge it by. Then I came up with a scoring system based on broadheads and kind of how they compare to each other, a 1 to 10 scoring system to gauge that sharpness. Then I also do an edge retention test, where after penetration test 1, I also do a sharpness test, and I see how much of the sharpness has been lost. And I have a scale that I use to grade that on, so they get a score of 1 to 10 in that regard as well. Then I do a durability test, where I shoot fixed blade heads through 22 gauge steel plate up to 5 times. And mechanicals, I shoot through a 1/2 inch layer of MDF because they're not quite as durable typically. And I shoot them 5 times through that layer of MDF just to see how well they hold up through that. And then the final test that I do is I shoot them into a cinder block because I just want to see the zero penetration test, like test the overall structural integrity and durability of the head. And it's just kind of fun to do that anyway. And then I also have a score that I use for ease of resharpening, and I put the price on the score list as well. And then I take all of those scores, and based on how I think the broadhead performed, I give it a Lusk grade, a score of 1 to 10 golden arrows based on how effective that broadhead is at accomplishing what it sets out to accomplish. And for all of these tests, I'm using my Bowtech SR6, 27-inch draw. It's at 72 pounds. I lower it to 65 pounds for the penetration test through cardboard just because I don't want to shoot it all the way through and go into my wall. Okay, then for arrows, I'm using, for most of the tests, the Bishop Archery FOC King arrow. It's super straight, flies extremely well. It's also durable. But then for the harder impact tests, I'm using the Bishop Archery FAD Eliminator, the Firearms Dispatch Eliminator. It's footed, and so it's extra durable. And then for some destruction tests that I'm going to do down the road, I use the Bishop Archery GOAT, the greatest of all time. This is the straightest, stiffest, most durable arrow that's ever been made, apparently. I mean, this thing is a formidable weapon. And so I'm going to be using this in some of my tests down the road. So that explains a bit of the testing that I do. I hope it's helpful. Here's the Ozcut Elite 3. That one on the far right there was the first shot, the field point, and I pulled that. But I figured I'd just go ahead and shoot anyway because I knew that was my error on a field point. The others grew extremely well, the broadheads themselves. $400 grams. The Ozcut penetrated 7.5 inches. $450. Here you can see it penetrated through 65 layers of the cardboard. Here's the head after going through the steel plate 5 times, and it's in excellent shape. There's a slight nick in the edge right near the tip of one of the blades, maybe 2 of them right there, ever so slight. That'd be very easy to file out. Held together extremely well and spins very well also. Here's a good look at the holes that this broadhead makes and the wound channel that it would create. You see that it's not 3 slits with a little hole in the middle for the ferrule, but it really is like 3 triangles, very similar to the holes made by the Annihilator. You could go back and look at that video and compare the holes, but they're very, very similar to that. Okay, I took one of these dull heads and spent a little bit of time sharpening it with the Stay Sharp 344 just to see how it would do. I didn't spend much time, but let's see how it did. 275. Okay, man, these things really work, these Stay Sharp guides. They use a different grit of sandpaper over this curved surface, and you just stroke it like that. It's pretty easy to do. And then it comes out so much sharper, yet still has a very tough edge. Okay, this head absolutely buried in the concrete. Man, this is the deepest I've ever had a broadhead go, I think, and it's definitely the most stuck. I'm gonna have to get out my chisel and hammer and work to get this thing out. Here's the head after I got it out of the concrete finally. I had to use a chisel and a hammer, and it took about 20 minutes to get it out. But man, it did very well. Still spins super well. And you can see the white part there is mostly just the concrete. The tip here is perfect condition. I mean, it's still really sharp. That Tanto tip is impressive. This one blade got some nicks in it right there. I don't even know if you can make that out. But this head could definitely be resharpened, even after being shot into the concrete. So what'd you think of this broadhead? It performed really well. You can check out the score sheet and see the summary of all the different tests that I did, but this is a head really worth considering, especially if you're looking to maximize penetration. For whitetail and so forth, I tend to prefer a head with a bit more cutting area than this with a 1 1/8 inch cutting diameter, though it'll certainly get the job done. It makes really nice holes, so it'll do it. I personally like something with a little bit wider cut. However, for bigger animals or where you're really going after deep penetration, this is something really worth considering. Great job, Ozcut.